name's Brent. Welcome back to the workshop. As you can tell, I am up in the big workshop now. It's the first week of February and we've had a break in the freezing cold weather. So I'm going to start making some sawdust. I've done a lot of preparatory work, made a lot of drawings. I've actually made some changes to the woodworking shop, but I'll go over those in a little bit. But I want to make a bit of an update on how we're going to approach this because it's just me and I have a lot of work to do. We're going to have to do kind of the update portion of this build thread in a bit of a vlog format, but don't worry about it. We are going to get into a lot of details about layout. We're going to continue that discussion. We're going to talk a lot about how we actually cut the joints themselves, and we're going to get into a fair amount of detail on some of the different machines and how we use them. So there'll be lots of detail, but what I'm going to try and do is label the videos as they come out and as I publish them in a way that makes it easy to tell what's going on. So if you're not interested in this sort of less formal vlog approach, then you can just skip them and then just kind of home in on the more detailed kind of nerdy aspects of timber framing or the build in general, or the other way around, whatever you like. So I hope that works for everyone. It's just a practical thing for me because there's so much work to do. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is give you a little bit of an orientation of this big workshop, and then we'll talk a little bit about what I hope to accomplish this week, and then we're going to get going on it. Okay, so the building that I'm renting for this job is a decent sized Quonset hut. It's a little bit divided up, but the main workspace that I have here is a 30 by 38 foot open space, so it's not huge, but it'll have to do. So this is what I call the big shop, and it's the big shop because I do the timber framing work here, but I also this is where I keep all the big machines that are absolutely vital, not only to the millwork and furniture making side of what I do, but many of these are going to come in really handy in the timber framing side of stuff too. Actually, many of them already have. That is my pride and joy. That is a beautiful Wadkin EQ spindle molder. I am going to use that to bring the brace stock down to final width. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're going to be bringing stock down to width on the shaper. We'll also use that for machining the final pass on the arches in the timber frame braces, because many of the braces that are going in the building will have a nice gentle arch in them. And underneath the cover there is a Wadkin 24 by 8 inch thickness planer. I won't be using that in this job because it needs a full going over before I put it in service. I think it'll be okay. I just don't want to use it until I've had a chance to give it a good going over. That is a Wadkin chain chisel combination mortar, sir, and even though that weighs about as much as my wife's car, it is not big enough for heavy timber work. However, it is going to be absolutely vital, not only in the furniture making side of what I do, but it will be usable for the brackets that go on the gable end of the building, which I will show you before too long. And that is a Wadkin 30-inch bandsaw, and that will be absolutely vital for many things, not the least of which is cutting the arches in the timber frame braces. They'll be roughed out on that and then finished on the big shaper. I share this building. I'm renting for the most of it, but I'm sharing it with a young couple that run a CSA. And during the right time of year, when the CSA is not so busy, they keep busy running a commercial maple syrup operation. So what you're looking at is gallons and gallons of maple syrup. And hidden in behind some big vats of maple syrup over there is my beautiful Wadkin RD 6-inch jointer. I can't get to it right now, but I will before too long. And that is going to be vital in preparing the stock for preparing the braces for the next stage of joinery cutting. So that's a wonderful machine. Now down here is a little aspect of this building that I have access to that is going to be huge. It's going to be a big help. This is a small but heated room that I am going to reserve for those days when it's just too cold. It is early February and there will be plenty of freezing cold days left. So this is a 10 by 16 foot space. The room is bigger than that, but there's a bunch of my wife's half-finished projects in here. So I only have access to about 10 or 12 by 16 feet. So that's going to be plenty, especially for a lot of the shorter braces. So I'm going to have to, shorter material. So I'm going to have to kind of reserve this space for those very cold days. And so it means I can stay efficient even when it's really cold. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is get this space a little bit easier to work in. Over in this corner here is my brace stock. In the early days of timber framing, I was sort of following Steve Chappell's advice about using hardwood, specifically oak or ash, for the braces. So what I have there is a pile of oak and ash braces. Now, there's a bit of an interesting story about that. The farmer that I bought all the trees from, that I ultimately turned into these timbers, he was cutting hardwood at the same time as I was cutting and milling these timbers. And he brought me up to take a look at some of these beautiful oak and ash logs that he cut down for firewood. And he said, I think maybe these would be better served in your building than in my stove. So what that means is these are cut much longer than I need them. So what I'm going to do is cut the nicest bits out of these, turn them into, and get ready to turn them into braces. And then the cutoffs, if they're still nice enough, the short little bits, they're going to become the remainder of my pegs. So in a way, it works out really well. So what that will do is it'll give me more space here for walking around. It'll also give me access to these 8x8 timbers. These 8x8s are going to become the vertical uprights, in other words, the queen posts on the second floor, but they'll also become the main posts on the first floor. So what we're going to do is get those things out of there, and we're going to use my nice little timber cart, and we're going to move them into the heated room, which will make walking around this main area a lot easier.
I wanted to start with the 8x8s because they're taking up a lot of floor space. I placed them one at a time up on the sawhorses and then assessed them before cutting them to length, plus a little bit of trim. So these are for the mid posts downstairs, but also the queen posts upstairs. Now they're very similar members with 4-inch tenons on top and then 1 or 2 36-inch braces near the top as well. But the queens, they also have a tenon on the bottom. So I'm just making a general structural assessment of the members, making sure that they look okay, but also making sure that the tenons and the brace mortises don't fall on a nasty, ugly old knot or something like that. So I'm going to make sure I cut both ends of them, even if just a smidge, just so I have a nice fresh clean end to start the layout process. The ends are often where dirt gets trapped, either on the pitch or in the wax sealant I put on the end, and that can be murder on the planer blades. So what I did is I cut them all the ends off nice and clean, and I gave them a really good brush down to make sure there was no grit or anything like that on them before I planed all 4 sides. I went through all of these one at a time until I processed them all, and I ended up only rejecting one due to rot. So they all went into the heatable room so that I can work on those during cold days if I have to. Moving on to the brace blanks, it was pretty much the same thing. Some had a lot of checking on the ends, so I didn't really have much of a choice in where I cut the brace blank out, but many of them had no checking at all, so I could easily dodge bad grain or any defects pretty easily. Some of these were over 8 feet long and in solid white oak at a generous 4x8. They were over 100 pounds, so a solid day of this was plenty.
Okay, so week 1 wrap up. This is the first vlog in the shop build. Doesn't look like a lot, but this is actually a lot of progress. Feels really good. So there's the brace stock that was over length that was there and in the way is all cut up. I'll show you that in a minute. We're all swept up here. I moved the big timbers to the left a little bit. Gives me a nice little spot to work. The timber cart was fantastic. I'm thrilled with it. It's everything I hoped it would be. So let's go take a look in the little heated room. Okay, so that's great. That is the first batch of braces. Those are the ones that were over length and in the way in kind of the main shop. So I've got them processed. So what that has turned into is 28 braces. Most of them are white oak, but I've done a survey of the rest of the stash that can kind of stay there where it is. It's not in the way. I should be able to do all white oak braces for the downstairs of the building, which is nice. And then the upstairs can be the white ash that I cut right behind our house. So that'll be nice as well. So looking like I should have all hardwood braces in the shop. So that's neat. Now they're in here in the little heated section for a couple of weeks until I get around to jointing and planing them. I don't think they're going to dry much more in here, but any surface dampness that's on them from this sort of changing weather that we had, we'll be able to sort of knock that off before I joint and plane them. And then once they're jointed, they'll go down to the small shop attached to the house where I can process them on days when I don't really have time to make the trip up to the big shop, or it's 30 below freezing and I don't feel like going out. I can work in the small heated shop. So that's going to work out really well. The other ones will stay out there for the time being. But yeah, I'm really encouraged with how they seasoned. They're going to be great, and it's looking like I should be able to have 3 3/4 inch thick brace stock, which is great. Now these are all the cutoffs and the extras from the brace, little bits and pieces that were not long enough to make another brace, but too nice to throw away. Some of that looks really nice, and a friend of mine is going to come and we're going to spend a day or so cutting this all up into bits and pieces that he needs, so that's great. And some of the bits that are too short for him are long enough for pegs, and I'm going to turn those into pegs. So it's all working out great. And also, what's key to being efficient is I also have probably half of the main building posts in here ready to go. Sawhorses are all stationed and all set to go. So again, if it's really cold, I can work away in here. Those are the posts for the addition, the newer section that I've only recently designed. I'll get you caught up to speed on that before too long, but they're also in here ready to go as well. Okay, folks, that wraps up the first kind of vlog type video of the shop build series. I hope you're okay with the vlog approach. It's a fast and efficient way for me to kind of give folks an update, because I do get a lot of DMs and I get a lot of questions from folks about how the shop build is going. So it's a quick and dirty way to get that out of there. But don't worry, because I am, like I said before, still going to go into a lot of detail in a much more sort of refined videos about a lot of different aspects of timber framing, but also just a lot of aspects about the build thread, the building, and our approach to building overall. So we're going to get into a lot of details about the actual execution of the joints. We're talking about more about layout, how I use the power tools on an imperfect surface. We're going to talk a fair amount about the various power tools that are sort of specific to timber framing. We'll talk about especially the chain mortiser, but I've actually already started a fairly detailed video about the big 12.5 inch wide Makita planer, which is really important to where I am right now, which is the very early stages of the beam preparation. So yeah, I hope you appreciate the vlog format. Please comment and hit the like button if it works for you. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.